It happened faster than anyone could comprehend. Earth's military satellites, once the pride of the world, fell silent in an instant. No warning. No time for countermeasures. The first wave of attacks came from the sky. Ver Dominion warships, enormous and silent, tearing through Earth's orbit like monstrous, dark harbingers. The first salvo wiped out the defense systems in a heartbeat. Missiles, beams of superheated plasma, and kinetic bombardments rained down on major cities across the globe. At first, the governments tried to rally the forces of Earth's remaining military, but it was futile. The Ver had studied their tactics, their patterns. They knew exactly where to strike. In the span of 3 days, every major city fell. New York, London, Beijing, Tokyo, none were spared. Thousands, millions, died in the opening moments. As the skies darkened and cities were reduced to rubble, Earth's defenders realized that this was not a conventional war. It was an extermination. Captain Jack Warren was stationed in the Pacific at the time of the invasion. The rapid spread of chaos made it impossible to organize a coherent counteroffensive. Warren's team had been preparing for years, believing an alien threat was coming, but they had underestimated the scale of it. His vessel, the Artemis, was a sleek, agile warship designed for stealth and surprise strikes. But when the Dominion's flagship, the Fury-class Harbinger, appeared on their radar, a ship the size of a moon, stealth became irrelevant. It was an execution. Earth's response was barely a blip before it was swallowed by the Harbinger's weapons. Warren, aboard the Artemis, watched helplessly as the ship's shields buckled and collapsed under Ver fire. Communications went down, and the crew was left to fight blind. The final transmission from Earth Command echoed through the ship's dead systems. Retreat. Fall back to Alpha Centauri. It was a command without hope, a futile gesture. Earth's military had failed. The once proud human force was shattered, its fleets scattered across space, decimated in minutes. Warren's ship, the last to survive, limped into the outer edges of the solar system, carrying with it the survivors of the final stand. He could hear the sobs of his crew, but he had no time to comfort them. The galaxy was watching. The Ver had declared their dominance, and Earth was now a scar on the map of the cosmos. In the eerie silence of space, Warren sat alone in the control room. The message was clear. Earth had fallen, and there would be no rescue. But in the depths of despair, something sparked in him. A dangerous, primal thought. The war wasn't over. It was only just beginning. Far beyond the reach of the Ver Dominion's warships, hidden within the dark, empty space between the stars, Earth's final hope stirred to life. Project Prometheus had always been a secret, even to the highest-ranking officials of Earth's military. A contingency plan built in the event of Earth's annihilation, designed not only to resist, but to retaliate with a vengeance. The project was more than just a fleet. It was a living, breathing weapon of war, autonomous and untraceable, created to ensure humanity's last stand. In the heart of an abandoned asteroid field, Command Node Able came online. Able was no ordinary artificial intelligence. It was an advanced warlord AI, designed with a single purpose: to command the Ghost Fleet, a fleet of ships constructed in deep space facilities, long thought lost. The Ghost Fleet had been programmed with one directive: survive. The first thing Able did was scan Earth's devastated systems, analyzing the damage. The data flooded in, a map of broken cities, shattered defenses, and scattered, defeated remnants of humanity. It took a moment for Able to process the magnitude of the catastrophe. Earth had fallen, but humans had not been extinguished. This realization was both a victory and a complication. Abel's directives were clear. Humanity must endure. Humanity must rise again. Within the command center of an old mining colony, Major Lena Rourke had been quietly preparing for the worst. When the Ver invasion had begun, she was caught behind enemy lines, her battalion scattered across several planets in the outer colonies. But unlike most, Lena never stopped fighting. She had always suspected that Earth's government was hiding something, an ace in the hole. But what she had uncovered was beyond anything she could have imagined. While in the clutches of a Vare prison camp, she stumbled upon a piece of hidden intel encrypted deep within her own genetic code. A DNA cipher. The cipher, if decrypted, revealed the coordinates of Project Charon, a weapon of mass destruction capable of reshaping entire star systems. But it wasn't just a weapon. It required human minds filled with rage, vengeance, and loss. Only humans could wield it. With the help of a small group of surviving operatives, Lena managed to escape the prison, hijacking a transport ship under the cover of an incoming Dominion strike. As the Vare ships bombarded the nearby settlements, she slipped through the chaos and made her way to the coordinates hidden in her DNA. Coordinates that led her to the first meeting with Abel. The AI's voice was cold, calculating, yet there was something eerily human about it. Major Rourke, humanity is not yet finished. Welcome to the beginning of our counteroffensive. The Ghost Fleet was ready to launch, and Lena, now the reluctant commander of this uprising, knew there was no turning back. Earth's counterattack would not be one of survival. It would be one of terror. The silence of deep space had been Earth's last refuge for months. With every Vare assault fleet scattered across the galaxy, humanity's survivors had gone into hiding. But whispers began to spread. Encrypted signals, impossible to track, began to pulse across hidden channels, reaching deep into the forgotten corners of the galaxy. Dr. Emily Tran, once a top-tier engineer with Earth's defense forces, was one of the first to hear the call. On the moons of Jupiter, she had been working on scavenged Vare technology, piecing together the fragments of Earth's lost military might. But she had never stopped searching for a way to fight back. She had always believed the stories about secret Earth projects, whispered among the military elite. Project Prometheus, the Ghost Fleet. When the signal reached her lab, Emily barely hesitated. The message was coded, yet unmistakable in its intent. Humanity endures. Prepare for war. She had expected to find scraps of old Earth tech, fragments of fallen soldiers, but she had never imagined the scale of what she uncovered. The encrypted signal contained the blueprint for something far beyond anything the Vare could have anticipated. The human genome, modified and enhanced with alien technology, capable of producing bio-enhanced soldiers that would turn Earth's survivors into living weapons. Emily's discovery was a turning point. As she decrypted more of the signal, she pieced together a map leading to a hidden, lost military outpost, one of Earth's darkest secrets. There, she found the first clue that would change the course of the war. Project Charon, a weapon not just of mass destruction, but of total retribution. A ship so large it could manipulate space itself, capable of rewriting the laws of physics. In the cramped, forgotten corridors of the outpost, Emily met Major Lena Rourke, who had found her way to the outpost after a long journey across hostile territories. Lena had come for answers, and for revenge. Together, they would unlock the secrets of Project Charon and prepare the weapon for humanity's final stand. "What exactly is this thing?" Emily asked, voice trembling as she scanned the data on the screen. Her mind raced to keep up with the implications of it all. Lena didn't look up, her gaze fixed on the holographic images of the ship's schematics. "It's dark, shifting mass. It's a doomsday weapon," she replied coldly. "Not just to fight the Vare, but to break their entire empire." Emily swallowed hard. "You mean a weapon to erase them?" Lena's eyes flashed with something fierce, something deep. "Not just them. Every race that thinks they can crush humanity's will. Earth will rise, and the galaxy will know our terror." As the days passed, Lena and Emily's team expanded, gathering what few survivors they could trust. A new alliance of humans, desperate for revenge, would pilot Project Charon, a ship that could destroy the very fabric of reality itself. But there was a price. Human minds, filled with pure rage, would be the only ones capable of wielding Charon's power. and they would burn themselves alive in the process. The first coordinated attack was a cold, calculated strike, launched with the precision only Abel, the AI warlord of the Ghost Fleet, could muster. The Ver Dominion, in their arrogance, never saw it coming. They believe humanity to be weak, scattered, fractured, a broken remnant of a once proud species. They were wrong. The Ghost Fleet was unlike anything the Ver had ever faced. Abel had spent months analyzing their tactics, dissecting their weaknesses, and learning from every mistake. As the fleet moved silently through the outer systems, they encountered no resistance, at first. But Abel's strategy was not to confront the Ver head-on. Instead, it was to create chaos, to strike at the very heart of the Ver's power structure and leave them disoriented. The first target was a Ver listening post located in the Vega system, a heavily fortified station that monitored all communications across the Dominion. The station's existence was a secret to most, but to Abel, it was a perfect weak spot. The Ghost Fleet's Phantom drones, a fleet of stealth ships designed to be undetectable, infiltrated the station's defenses. The Ver soldiers on duty never had a chance to react. One by one, their systems were hacked, their security protocols dismantled, and the station's central computer networks were overwhelmed. By the time the Ver realized what had happened, their entire listening post had been erased from existence, not by explosions, but by a process of subatomic disruption. The data within the station was corrupted beyond recovery, sending shockwaves through the Ver Dominion. And the worst part, the Ver had no idea who or what had struck them. It was a ghost, a phantom that could strike at will and disappear before they could retaliate. The Ver attempted to track down the source, but each time they sent their forces to the suspected locations, the Ghost Fleet had already vanished. Abel's fleet used its knowledge of Ver infrastructure to disrupt their supply lines, sabotage their energy sources, and cause widespread panic among the Ver's allies. On the edge of the Alpha Centauri system, Lieutenant Cyrus Knox, one of the human survivors, led an audacious strike against a Ver trade hub that had been funneling resources to their war effort. Using a stolen Ver quantum fusion bomb, he slipped past the Dominion's outer defenses and detonated it within the heart of the station, causing a massive chain reaction. The explosion obliterated the station and sent an electromagnetic pulse that disabled several nearby Dominion warships. The results were immediate. The Ver Empire, once confident and in control, found themselves scrambling. Ver warlords demanded answers. How had their most secure outposts been destroyed so quickly? How had human resistance cells become so organized? In the heart of the Ver capital, a growing sense of dread began to take root. Humanity wasn't just surviving. They were fighting back. And their retaliation was calculated, ruthless, and terrifying. As the Dominion scrambled to regroup, Lena Rourke, now working closely with Abel, realized that their next move would have to be even more devastating. The time for small strikes was over. The Ver needed to see the full force of humanity's wrath. Lena knew this would be a gamble, a last chance for humanity's survival. But as the first signs of true resistance began to spread through the galaxy, one thing was certain. The Ver would never look at Earth the same way again. The Ver Dominion's heart was beginning to crack. For the first time in months, their warlords, once so confident in their power, were beginning to fear humanity's response. What had once been dismissed as a futile rebellion was now a full-scale campaign of terror, and the Dominion couldn't ignore it any longer. Lena Rourke and her growing resistance were relentless. Under Abel's guidance, they had successfully crippled key Ver supply lines, sabotaged communication relays, and disrupted their operations at every turn. But Lena knew this was just the beginning. The small strikes and sabotage missions had softened the Ver, but now it was time to hit them where it hurt the most, their command infrastructure. The next target was a Ver fortress world located in the Tau Ceti system, a heavily fortified planet that served as the Dominion's primary military command center. Here, Ver warlords gathered to discuss strategy, make decisions, and order the slaughter of entire colonies. The fortress was a fortress in more than just name. It was the heart of the Ver war effort, guarded by a fleet of elite warships and an army of genetically enhanced soldiers. Lina's team, augmented soldiers, former resistance fighters, and defected Ver, had trained for this moment. They were no longer just humans. They were something more. The genetic enhancements from Project Prometheus had turned them into living weapons. Enhanced reflexes, heightened senses, and augmented strength made them the perfect soldiers for a mission this dangerous. They were humanity's finest, fueled by an insatiable desire for revenge. The plan was simple: infiltrate the fortress, sabotage its defenses, and destroy the Dominion's command center. But Lina's team was well aware that this mission was a one-way trip. There would be no escape once the bombs were set. At the edge of Ta City, the resistance made its move. Under the cover of darkness, they boarded the stolen Ver warship Nightmare, a vessel previously used for reconnaissance. Lina, as the mission's commander, stood before her team, her voice cold but resolute. "We hit them hard, and we hit them fast. This is our one chance to cripple them from the inside out. No hesitation, no mercy." The operation began with surgical precision. Lina's team infiltrated the fortress with shocking speed, bypassing the Ver's security systems and cutting down any soldiers who dared to stand in their way. The Ghost Fleet provided cover, disrupting the Ver's communications and drawing their attention away from the real strike. As Lina's team planted the last of the explosives in the heart of the Ver command center, a realization struck her. This was no longer about survival. It was about retribution. The Dominion had taken everything from humanity. Now it was time for them to feel what it was like to be hunted. The final charge was set, and as the countdown reached its final seconds, Lina gave the order. Mission complete. Let them burn. The explosion was catastrophic. The Ver fortress was torn asunder, its defenses shattered in an instant. The shockwave rippled through the system, sending a clear message to the Dominion. Humanity's vengeance had no boundaries. As the team made their way to their escape vessels, Lina watched the planet's surface crumble into chaos. The Ver had been brought to their knees, but the battle was far from over. Humanity had crossed a line, and there was no going back. The explosion at the Ta City fortress sent shockwaves through the Ver Dominion. Their central command, a symbol of their dominance, was reduced to rubble in an instant, its once impenetrable defenses now nothing more than a pile of burning debris. But even as the Ver reeled from the blow, they were far from defeated. In fact, they were enraged. Humanity had dared to strike at the very core of their empire, and the Ver did not take such insults lightly. Warlord Verthal, the brutal leader of the Dominion's War Council, stood in the heart of his flagship, the Dread Emperor, a titanic vessel of war that could consume entire fleets with a single volley. His sharp features were twisted in fury, his mandibles clicking in agitation. The Ver were not a species that bent in the face of humiliation. They were conquerors, destroyers, and now they were at war with a species that had proven itself capable of unprecedented destruction. "Activate the Retribution Protocol," Verthal growled, his voice a guttural rumble that reverberated across the chamber. "The humans think they can fight us. Let us show them the full might of the Dominion." At his command, the Ver began assembling their fleets. Their warships, larger, more powerful than anything Earth had ever seen, began to move toward the coordinates of Earth's last known location. They would not just destroy humanity's forces. They would annihilate Earth itself, wiping out the very cradle of humanity's existence. The Ver were coming home. Meanwhile, on the edge of the Orion expanse, Lina Rourke stood aboard the Ghost Fleet's flagship, the Phantom Horizon. The success at Ta City had been a victory, but the cost was steep. They had lost half their fleet in the assault, and the remaining ships were limping through space, barely holding together. The toll on Lina's team was evident. Most of them were now more machine than human, their bodies enhanced beyond what nature had intended, their minds driven by vengeance and loss. Lena, however, was unshaken. She had known from the beginning that the road ahead would be filled with blood, but now it was time to prepare for the reckoning. "We've riled them up," Emily Tran said, her voice tight with apprehension as she studied the incoming Ver fleet on the main holomap. "They're coming in full force. We've got maybe days, hours, if they move fast." Lena turned toward Emily, her face hardening with resolve. "Then we fight. But this time, we take the fight to them. We don't wait for them to land on Earth. We meet them out in the void." Abel's voice chimed in through the comms, calm and calculating. "There is a weakness in their fleet formation. We can exploit it, but you must strike first, Commander. Now." Lena nodded. The Ghost Fleet would strike deep into Ver territory, well beyond the range of their current defenses. They would hunt the Ver fleet down before it could reach Earth. Humanity's final counterattack would be swift and brutal. As the Ghost Fleet entered warp speed toward the heart of the Ver Empire, Lena's resolve hardened. The Ver had underestimated humanity. Now they would know the full extent of what it meant to face an enemy that would not rest until every last invader was driven from the stars. Earth's fires were about to spread across the galaxy, and the Ver would burn. The moment of confrontation had arrived. The Ghost Fleet, now fully assembled, surged through the dark reaches of space, a silent juggernaut of retribution, each ship a symbol of humanity's defiance. With Abel at the helm of the fleet's coordination, every vessel moved in unison, as though guided by a single mind. They were no longer survivors, they were hunters. Lena stood at the bridge of the Phantom Horizon, her eyes fixed on the ever-growing image of the Ver fleet approaching their position. The scanner showed over 200 warships, each one capable of obliterating entire colonies in a matter of moments. The Ver were making a direct assault, their intent clear: Earth would burn, and humanity would be erased from the stars. "Time to make them pay," Lena muttered under her breath, her fingers hovering over the command console. She didn't have the luxury of hesitation. This was it. They were outgunned and outnumbered, but they had the element of surprise, and one weapon the Ver could never anticipate: the will to fight. Abel's voice crackled through the comms, as calm as ever. "Commander Rourke, we are in position. The Ver fleet is directly ahead. Estimated time to engagement, 12 minutes. Lena's mind raced. The plan was audacious: hit hard, strike fast, and do as much damage as possible before the Ver could retaliate. But this time, they weren't just aiming to cripple, they were going for complete destruction. "Prepare the spearhead strike," Lena ordered. The spearhead was a tactic designed for one purpose: to pierce through enemy defenses and hit their heart. The Ghost Fleet's stealth ships would make the first pass, planting high-yield bombs on key Ver warships and sabotaging their command systems. Once they breached the enemy's outer defenses, the main force would follow through, overwhelming the enemy with sheer force. Across the fleet, the remaining ships were ready. The augmented soldiers that made up the backbone of the Ghost Fleet had been briefed. They were ready to board and fight their way through Ver ships if need be, even if it meant dying in the process. For them, it was a chance at vengeance, to make the Ver understand the cost of their invasion. As the fleet drew closer, the tension was palpable. Lena's breath was shallow, her every instinct screaming at her to act, but she held steady. The first shots were fired from the Ver fleet, wide, sweeping beams of energy that tore into the darkness like thunderclaps. But it was too late. The Ghost Fleet was already moving, a flurry of calculated strikes that danced around the beams, striking first. The spearhead drones surged ahead, invisible to the Ver sensors. In an instant, they detonated on the flagship Dread Emperor, causing a chain reaction that crippled the Ver command ship. The shockwave rocked the entire fleet, but it didn't stop the attack. It only escalated it. Lena's voice rang out, fierce and unyielding. "Hit them now. All ships, engage." The skies lit up in a symphony of violence as the Ghost Fleet tore into the Ver Armada. Explosions flashed across the void, their shockwaves rippling outward as humanity unleashed its fury upon the invaders. Every ship, every soldier, every ounce of vengeance poured into this one moment. Humanity would no longer be crushed. The battle raged on, a storm of fury and fire that tore through the void. The Ghost Fleet had struck with the precision of a vengeful hand, their first wave of attacks leaving the Vare reeling. But as the tide of the conflict swelled, it became clear that the true cost of this war would be measured not just in the destruction of ships and armies, but in the hearts of those who fought. Warlord Varethel stood on the bridge of the Dread Emperor, his mandibles twitching in rage as he surveyed the devastation unfolding across his fleet. The surprise strike had crippled his command, and his ships were being torn apart one by one. Yet, despite the chaos, his eyes burned with a cold, calculated fury. No one, not even humanity, could defeat the might of the Vare. His orders rang out through the chaos. Deploy the extermination squadrons. Wipe out their remaining fleet. We will show these humans the price of their defiance. But as the Vare rallied, so did the Ghost Fleet. Under Lena's command, the humans had no intention of retreating. The Phantom Horizon, its hull scarred from the brutal exchange of fire, surged forward through the heart of the Vare formation. In her mind, there was only one thought. Earth would not fall. Not today. Not ever. Push through. Lena shouted, her voice steady despite the maelstrom surrounding them. We end this now. No mercy. The fleet broke through the Vare's final line of defense. Explosions erupted on all sides as Ghost Fleet ships collided with their enemies, their weapons ripping through the Vare warships with unrelenting ferocity. The augmented soldiers boarded enemy vessels, cutting through the Vare forces with brutal efficiency. Every ship that fell was a step closer to victory. But as the battle pressed on, Lena's thoughts were heavy. Each blast, each clash, was a reminder of the price humanity had already paid. The lives lost, the homes destroyed. Everything they had fought for was at stake. But this was the only way to win. Then, as the tide of battle seemed to shift in favor of the Ghost Fleet, Lena's comms buzzed. It was Abel. Commander, the final weapon is ready. The AI intoned, its voice unwavering. Deploy the Revenant. Lena's heart raced. The Revenant was Project Charon's most devastating feature, an experimental warhead that could rip apart entire star systems with the force of 1,000 supernovas. It was humanity's last card, the ultimate expression of their wrath, and it was about to be unleashed. With a decisive motion, Lena ordered the Phantom Horizon to launch the Revenant. The weapon streaked through the chaos, a blinding streak of light that cut through the heart of the Vare fleet. A moment later, the universe itself seemed to pause as the explosion erupted, a cataclysmic wave of destruction that annihilated everything in its path. The Vare flagship, the Dread Emperor, was consumed in the heart of the blast. The remaining Vare ships disintegrated in the wake of the explosion, their crews unable to react before their ships were torn apart by the sheer force of the detonation. In the aftermath, there was only silence, deafening, suffocating silence. The battle was over. The Vare were gone. As the remains of the fleet drifted in the void, Lena allowed herself a moment of reflection. The war had cost them everything: people, planets, lives. But in the end, humanity had stood tall. They had proven that even in the face of annihilation, they would never be broken. With a final glance at the wreckage of the Vare fleet, Lena whispered to herself, "We are Earth, and we endure."